I don't know whether it's nostalgia speaking, but it seems to me is that the early 1980s was the golden era for the pop single. The 60s were dominated by obviously the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, Herman's Hermits, and so on. But they all seemed to be underpinned by these great big corporations, these record corporations that had built up during the 50s and so on. And then when it came to the 70s, that trend continued. It seemed to me that the biggest bands kind of hoovered just about everything up, and there was novelty singles in the charts, especially during the mid-period of the 1970s before punk came along. And then when punk came along, it kind of, I don't like this phrase, but it kind of democratized music, pop music in a way, and that labels like Stiff Records appeared, and you started to get much more independent record labels and independent bands really starting to do the business in the charts. And when punk gave way to post-punk and new wave, and some of that sensibility, some of that do-it-yourself, that entrepreneurial, that independent kind of thinking just seemed to continue into the 80s, and we ended up with charts which had a very eclectic mix of artists who managed to be successful. And of course, you go all the way forward to the last 20 years. I don't buy singles anymore, no surprise there. But now we seem to be back to the 60s, where a handful of artists hoover up just about everything. And of course, well, people don't really buy singles. They stream now, of course. But it's just pop music since kind of the dance movement that took place in the 90s in particular. It's kind of got really quite boring and vanilla, and that's might be my age speaking. So that's why I say, is it nostalgia speaking? But I was just thinking some of the singles that were in the charts back in 1982. So this is 1982. We've got Spandau Ballet and Instinction from their first album. Someone will correct me. XTC, Senses Working Overtime. Great. The wonderful Echo and the Bunnymen. So here we've got The Back of Love from Porcupine. Duran Duran, Save a Prayer. Elvis Costello made the charts with a live version of I'm Your Toy. So from the country album Almost Blue. Talking Heads, Life During Wartime from the this band. The name of this band is Talking Heads, the double live album. The wonderful Mighty Wah and the extended version, the Talking Blues version of The Story of the Blues, plus 7 Minutes to Midnight, one of their early classics. This is a landmark single, The Message by Grandmaster Flash. PRS5, The Cure, 100 Years. So it seemed to me as that there was loads of great music kicking around, and so. But when it came to doing the albums, my top 20 albums of the year, they fell into place quite quickly. It was quite easy. But I was buying loads of singles. I was buying 12-inch singles and I was buying 7-inch singles because I was at college, what they call Northumbria University now, studying business and marketing, and I was absolutely hoovering everything up there. It was just a thrill. I was a couple of years older than most of the other students, but still young enough to mix and enjoy life, all the partying and everything else that went on. I loved the learning, because if you followed my backstory a little bit, or you've tripped over it by accident, you might have heard me on his previous video talk a bit about how lamentable my academic performance was at school, and how I kind of was a late starter and started to get busy only after I left school. So getting the opportunity to study was just amazing, and I absolutely loved it. Not a lot of money around. I was on a full grant, so I did get a lot more money than the average student. Well, the middle class student got less than I did, so I got plenty of money, but enough to buy singles, not enough to buy too many albums, and certainly not enough to be driving a car and going out clubbing, which I'd been doing while I'd been working. But yeah, it was an absolutely brilliant time, absolutely fantastic time. And I was moving around, moving from a flat I was sharing with a mate of mine, Martin, then hooking up with Simon and Robin in the halls, and then in Gateshead for a student flat. It was great times, transitory times, but great times. So anyway, albums. When I look back on 1982, as I say, the choice of albums has become quite simple to select 20, and there's a few behind me here which are notable absentees. Some will say from the 1982 rundown of the best albums, but these are the ones that have meant the most to me, and the ones that I have continued to play over the years. So, and this time I'm not gonna forget the numbers on the rundown, because I've got bits of paper between every album. So number 20 is the self-titled album by the disco diva who, like a lot of artists who came to prominence during the disco phase in the mid-70s, their music became, as disco kind of ran out of steam a little bit, and the music started to incorporate kind of more rock elements to it. And there's 2 or 3 albums in this list here that would qualify for that description. But the first one, let me just say, is Donna Summer. So Donna Summer. So what have we got here? Load of cover versions. Most notably for me is that you've got Bruce Springsteen's Protection, which hadn't appeared on any album at that particular point in time. You had the Mystery of Love, The Woman Who Made the State of Independence that John Anderson had done. Love Is Just a Breath Away, Lush Life. Yeah, good album. Don't play that one very often now, but that was definitely an important album for me back in the day, in 1982. Something quite different from 1982 from Los Angeles, and that's WofVOodo, and that is Call of the West. This is their second album, and this Stan Ridgway's band, although some say there's the guitarist here, it's Mark Morland, he started the band, but Stan Ridgway was the real character in this band. Now, listening to this just the other day, it made me think, it's noted for, of course, for Mexican radio. It's their biggest song. But what was really interesting to me is maybe it's that democratic feel within a band structure, that Stan Ridgway's vocals are kind of buried a little bit when compared to his solo stuff. So I think he really flowered when the single Camouflage, the Big Heat album, came out a few years later. And so his voice here, which is a great instrument, doesn't feature so strong in here. But the Stan Ridgway, and of course the people who know WofVOodo, the kind of cinematic feel, the noir feel, the storytelling, and some of those stories are quite strange as well, which makes them really interesting. But yeah, WofVOodo and Stan Ridgway was my number 19. Number 18 was one of these bands who had, I kind of took advantage of just the anything goes attitude in the early 1980s, and in 1982 this band came up with a really great sound, very electronic but guitar based, fair lyrics, fair singing, but they were great. They were so exciting, and that was The Flock of Seagulls. A Flock of Seagulls. So the I Ran single from this album is spectacular, and that used to be played at all the student gigs and pubs all the time. Just absolutely brilliant. So The Flock of Seagulls, that gets played quite a bit these days still, because it's a great way, but it sounds very, very 1980s. So number 17, something very different, and one that I didn't pick up on in 1982, but picked on much later when I was just curious about Captain Beefheart. And Captain Beefheart, as you'll probably know, a painter. Really weird guy back in the day. His music was blues and jazz influenced, and the word I like to use is ramshackled. His music was really ramshackled. And then he was taken on by, and of course Trout Mask Replica is the album for that sound. Just chaos on a double vinyl LP. Auditory chaos. But in the 1970s, he signed for Virgin Records, and there was some constraints, I think, put on him, and he started to put together songs that were had more structure about them, and the singing was just kind of less extreme. But when 1982, he brought this album called Ice Cream for Crow, and it's back to his ramshackled best. And this album just makes me laugh. The lyrics are hilarious. The song titles are hilarious. I did a video. I mentioned this in a video just a few months ago, talking about some of the song titles. But it is just chaos, and the title track is just brilliant. And you must see the YouTube video of the band performing in the desert. Ice Cream for Crow. That's really, really good. So yeah, that was number 17. Number 16 is a smooth classic, and that is Roxy Music's Avalon. It's hard to say much about this album other than to say that all the kind of interesting elements of the 1970s have been swept away, and we're on our way to, you know, the smooth. I mean, is it Another Time, Another Place, the Brian Ferry solo album where he's wearing a white tuxedo? That kind of has that. This album sounds a bit like White Tuxedo-ish. It's just incredibly smooth, but it's got some brilliant, brilliant songs on it. Opens with More of This. Avalon's absolutely gorgeous. India, I think, is instrumental. The Main Thing, yeah, it's wonderful album. But anyway, very, very smooth. Number 15 is Joni Mitchell, While Things Run Fast. Now, this is Joni when she's abandoned her the jazz feel of her mid-late 70s albums and started to embrace kind of rock. And it's got a bit of that 80s sheen, and it's a bit too upbeat for my taste. But just typical Joni Mitchell, the melodies don't go where you expect them to go, which makes the music constantly interesting. So as I say, it's not one of the greatest albums, but it is a good album. It opens with Chinese Cafe, that goes into Unchained Melody, and it's beautiful. It's really good. Wild Rings Run Fast is an excessive rock number, as is Solid Love. Does a nice version of You're So Square, Baby I Don't Care. But yeah, really, it's nice album, good album. So that's number 15. Number 14 is a band that I was seeing for about the third time. And their previous album was considered to be a bit of a dud, probably because it was a cheap 3-disc set that was rammed with filler, and the purists didn't like it very much. And they were no longer a punk band at this particular point in time, but you know, I'm talking about Combat Rock by The Clash. This one is a demo, gold stamp demo, and it's got a free poster inside, which I've not opened up since 1982 probably. But this opens with Know Your Rights. It's got the classic Should I Stay or Should I Go, which everyone's sick of because it's been in advertising all those years ever since. Rock the Casbah, I'm not sure if that would be released today. Straight to Hell, absolutely wonderful wonderful track. But yeah, Side 2 is not so good, but yeah, it's a good solid album. So that is number 14. Number 13 of my favourite, most important albums of 1982 will be coming in a moment. Is Laurie Anderson's Big Science. So, Oh Superman was the big single. This, I understand, is studio versions of the live thing she did called United States on about 4 discs sitting downstairs in the rack downstairs. But this is in turns weird, gorgeous, never boring. Oh Oh Superman is a great single, as I say, which is opens up side 2, but the title track, Big Science, is absolutely beautiful. Born Never Asked, it's great, fantastic, avant-garde, wonderful. So 13. Number 12 was a member of, had I just left the E Street Band, and that is Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul and Men Without Women. And that's the Men Without Women. Now, anybody who knows anything about Stephen Van Zandt will know that not only was he a great sideman for Bruce Springsteen, but he was also a great songwriter for Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. And his songwriting chops come out brilliantly on this album. It is like it's like a Southside Johnny album, so you can imagine it's in turns upbeat, but also good for ballads. But the horn section is tight. It's really, really good. And I remember seeing them in Newcastle in a basement club called Dingwalls. And I've only ever sweated more at a gig, and that was the Police's Synchronicity tour in when it came to Leeds a few years down the line. But this was just amazing. Tiny gig, tiny place, but big band on stage. The energy was absolutely fantastic. But you probably don't know any of these songs. Let me just say that there isn't a dud on this album. It's an absolutely brilliant album if you like that Springsteen-esque Southside Johnny, but with really prominent horns. This is a brilliant album. Really good. And, you know, I saw him touring about 3 or 4 years ago, and he's still brilliant on stage. Good singer, but for some reason decided to hang around with, get back in the E Street Band. Maybe a bit of an easy life, but of course he was an actor as well, wasn't he? In The Sopranos. Anyway, that's number 12, and Southside Johnny, Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul. Number 11 is Sulk by the Associates. Now, let me just, the Associates, Billy Mackenzie, and it's Ian Rankin, I think. Is it Ian Rankin who writes most of the music? It doesn't matter, does it? All this stuff doesn't matter. So anyway, I think it's Rankin anyway. So Billy Mackenzie. I mean, this is a great example of a band that sounded weird as hell, but managed to make the charts with Party Fears 2 and Club Country from this particular album. And the singing style, I was just thinking about it the other day, and I thought Billy Mackenzie's singing style, he sounds like an unhinged Brian Ferry combined with Peter Hamill singing A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers from 1971's Pawn Hearts. And the kind of singing you get, and there's a movie that I saw 5 minutes of, and it was enough for me. And it was, I think it was Les Miserables. And one of my daughters loves that movie, and all the dialogue is sung. So you've got these sentences that kind of don't scan, but they're somehow in a singing voice. And it's just, 5 minutes of that, you just think it's like a comedy. But yeah, anyway, but Billy Mackenzie, a tragic figure in the end. I think he took his own life. But this is a great album and of its era, but it still sounds amazing today. In fact, I bought a second copy, just about an updated, remastered version on vinyl, just about a month ago. Right, that's number 11, The Associates. Right, number 10 is Jack Michelson and Thriller. What can you say about this? It's incredible. It is biggest selling album of all time, maybe. This is the 25th anniversary remaster. Every track is amazing. And like I was saying before, where you had these dance kind of soul artists starting to incorporate more rock into their music. This was a great example with Beat It, of course, but Billie Jean. Thriller itself, fantastic. We've all got that one. Number 9 is Peter Gabriel 4. This is not as good as Peter Gabriel 3, but he was still the great innovator. It opens up with a magnificent 1-2 punch of the rhythm of the Heat and San Jacinto, which just got some and the end of Rhythm of the Heat, which has got some fantastic drumming on that. But it's also got Shock the Monkey on this, Lay Your Hands on Me, which is where he used to crowd surf. One of the first, as far as he used to stand on the edge of the stage with his arms out, lay your hands on me, and fall back into the audience. There's a picture of him doing that on his live album, Plays Live, which I think came in 1983. This also has I Have the Touch as well. So I think they call this Security in the United States. Don't know why, but it's Peter Gabriel 4. When I put this list together, I was really gutted when I pulled the albums out to find out there are 2 pieces of vinyl I just can't find. So I'm having to revert to CDs, and I don't know what's happened. I don't know whether I had a purge that I've forgotten, a small purge in the 1980s or 1990s, but I cannot remember. I just cannot put my hands on these 2 albums. The first one of which, number 8, is The Lexicon of Love by ABC. Absolutely wonderful album. Great pop band from Sheffield in England. It sounds symphonic, and that's why I always play it with the overture, which is the B-side of All of My Heart 12-inch, which is I can't remember the timing of it, but maybe it's up to about 10 minutes of all the themes that are in the Lexicon of Love. But it's just a great album. Still sounds fantastic today. Produced by Trevor Horn, no less. So no surprise there. So that was number 8. Number 7 is an album that I did, an artist I really liked, but I wasn't impressed with this album when it came out. I thought, oh my God, I really wanted something that was going to be kind of uplifting, epic, and so on. But no, what we got was Nebraska. Now this is regarded as a absolute classic, a brave move by Springsteen at the time, and all of these songs sound really dark and austere, and it's about people who are having in really troubled times, but when you go back to listen to it now in the context of his whole career, it is a bona fide classic. It is a brilliant album, and it makes The Ghost of Tom Joad, which came around in 1995, I think it was, sound like an orchestral piece. But if you're a fan of that one, you'll know that's pretty austere as well. But this is really, really hard going when you first get into it, but it's worth persisting with. So that was number. I told you I wasn't going to forget the numbers, but I probably have. So that was number 7. So number 6, here's the other one that I can't find the bloomin' vinyl, and that is Imperial Bedroom by Elvis Costello. So what can I say about this album? Well, I was a fan of Elvis Costello right the way from The Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes. Saw him a few times back in the day, around this particular time as well. But he's such a prolific artist, and in 1981, I think in the 1981 video I mentioned Almost Blue was a big brave move for him to go down the route of producing a country album. But he'd had his kind of new wavy years, and he decided to kind of let his music kind of really open out. And this album is rich, it's deep, it's got some great songs on it. I mean, there's one here that is a wonderful song, and that is Man Out of Time from this album. And this has got a slow version of Town Crier on the bass-side. That's worth getting a hold of if you're an Elvis Costello fan. So that's great. But yeah, just a wonderful album. This particular version here, it's got a bonus disc. He was so prolific during these years that the bonus disc is full of alternative versions and different songs. Absolutely incredible artist. Hard to love, but much to admire is how I kind of sum him up. Number 5. This album was, I don't know whether it was preceded by these absolutely brilliant 12-inch singles, but this is Promised You a Miracle, this is Glittering Prize, and this is the opening track of New Go Dream, Someone Somewhere in Summertime, and the very, very best version. So this is an album, Simple Minds, I showcased Sons and Fascination and Sister Feelings Cold in my 1981 video, but this one here was where they really beefed up the the bottom end of the sound. They first brought in a drummer called Mike Ogletree, who played with a band called Café Jacques. It was championed by Phil Collins in the mid-late 1970s. And he's a very intricate drummer, very, very good. But he was replaced by Mel Gaynor, who had this big welly of a style where the sound just grew massively. And this album includes both of those drummers. And I kind of think I was thinking that it's a bit like when Genesis had Bill Bruford for the Trick of the Tail tour, and then they replaced him with Chester Thompson. Bill was all this very musical, intricate playing, and then Chester Thompson came along with all those skills as well, but with more welly, more heft. But this is a great album from beginning to end. It feels a bit mainstream now, but this is still experimental. So that was great. That was New Gold Dream. Number 4 in my list, we're getting nearly to the end here, is the first album I bought by Prince, and that is 1999. I bought it on the back of a Little Red Corvette and the title track, of course, but this is a great album. This is kind of, again, this is another one where there was more of a dance feel in the very early albums, but more rock starts to come through a little bit here, and that was to get even bigger in a sound in the albums that were to come. But this is a great album. Let's Pretend We're Married, dance music, sex, romance. Lady Cab Driver is really funky, and International Lover will just make you laugh. It's absolutely brilliant as a closer on this album. So that's a great album, Prince 1999. Number 3, the top 3, is the 4th album. Is it the 4th album? Hard to say, but anyway, it was about the 4th album by The Cure, and that's Pornography. And this is the album. I loved 17 Seconds. I loved that it got darker still on Faith, and then they just went for darkness and distortion on this album, and it's just relentless. It's just, you put it on, 100 Years is the opening track. It's about 7 or 8 minutes, and it just fills the room with noise. It just doesn't relent through the whole of the album, but it's such a coherent piece of work. It's great. And the tour was just like this, just like red. The stage was all lit red. And I think, have I got something in here? Yeah, I've got something in it. What have I got in here? Yeah, I think I picked this up when I saw them at the City Hall. This is The Cure, the Book of Songs, Book of Song Words. So it's a whole load of song lyrics, right away from the very beginning, with photographs of the band. But yeah, great. I just love The Cure throughout the 1980s, and they've got a new album coming out, so I'm looking forward to that one too. So that's number 3. Number 2 is an album that is loved and hated in equal measure, I think, but I love it, and that is Donald Fagen's The Night Fly. Yes, it's got this nostalgic 50s theme that runs through this album. Sounds absolutely amazing. Again, every track. I think it's only about 35 minutes long, this album, but it's over in a flash. It's great. IGY, Green Flower Street, Ruby Baby, I think it's a cover. New Frontier, Night Fly itself, The Goodbye Look, Walk Between the Raindrops. What a, just a lovely song to finish off the album. So that is the second best album of 1982. The best album of 1982, and an album that I still play today, is the best album by Dire Straits, and that's Love Over Gold. Was this a brave album? When I was at college, before every exam, I played, as I was getting ready, I played Tunnel of Love from Making Movies at, turn up to 11, as it were. And I just thrilled. It was just such a thrill. But here, even though Mark Knopfler is a wonderful guitarist with a fantastic guitar tone, he allowed the keyboards to really start coming to the fore. And the opening track, about 14-15 minutes worth of Telegraph Road, starts with this keyboard wash. Is absolutely amazing. Great dynamics, great guitar solo, and then that's followed by Private Investigations. which is just a wonderful acoustic based song with great but very sparse percussion, and I think marimba is in there towards the end as well. But it's got a really interesting sound. Side 2 is not so interesting. It's got the horrible industrial disease on here, but Love Over Gold and It Never Rains are both pretty good songs as well. But yeah, that's the best album I keep going back to. So that's 1982. Just one thing that kind of brought the year down for me. I had a girlfriend, and towards the end of the year, called Jackie Denham. If you're out there, Jackie, you won't be saying this, but yeah, I was really into Jackie, and one of the things that she dumped me. Oh, we've all got stories like that, haven't we? And I held a torch for her for about 2 years before, your life moves on, as it were. But what was interesting about Jackie is that she was a ballet dancer in her spare time, and she got me interested in contemporary dance. So we used to go to the theatre to see some contemporary dance. And then, I had no money. I couldn't drive. She was getting leaned on by her friends to say, oh, you can get a boyfriend who's got all that sort of stuff and blah, blah, blah. So she dumped me, but we got together again to go and see this at the Theatre Royal, and that is Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Now, I'd been interested in classical music, as you know, since the early 1970s, and ballet's got some lovely tunes, particularly Tchaikovsky's absolutely wonderful. And, the Nutcracker, for example, is a great Christmas ballet, although all the tunes are in the second act. But this is just formidable, and I'll never, ever forget that night at the Theatre Royal seeing Swan Lake. Now, I didn't buy the album at the time, and I bought this later, and for a while, every time I played Swan Lake, I was thinking about that night. However, the music is so brilliant, it just transcends all personal memories of a particular relationship. And I've seen multiple performances of Swan Lake, and I absolutely love my Tchaikovsky's ballet. Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, as I say, if you're out there, Jack, I hope you've had a fantastic life. I've had a pretty good life myself, so I'm quite happy with all of that. But it's interesting that the people you meet, it's 40 years ago, people you meet at the time, someone will say something, or someone will recommend something, and it sticks with you. And it took me, that recommendation from Jackie took me down a path into deepening my appreciation of music that wasn't mainstream, wasn't going to be in the charts, but still it was incredibly rewarding. So, I thank her for that. So that's my life in music, 1982. So that one's off my chest, and I'll get on to 1983 in due course. If you stayed this long, amazing. But if you have, I hope you've found it interesting. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.